Welcome back to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for staying with us. Well, we are continuing our discussion of Governor Brian Sandoval's proposals to change Nevada's education system as laid out in his State of the State address. Nevada Superintendent Dale Urquiaga is here with me now, and we will get right to it.
Great.
Okay, in this segment, I want to talk about some of the big changes that aren't necessarily programs that are being added or money being allocated, but some big morphing that we're going to see in the system as a whole. The first one I want to talk to is the local school boards. He mentioned appointing them rather than electing them. I thought this was really interesting, especially up here in the north after following what's been going on with the Washoe County School District. But tell me about how he arrived at that decision, or how you arrived at that.
Sure. So part of it is what we experienced here in Washoe County, to be blunt. But also we have a model in our own State Board of Education that is a hybrid model. Part of my board is elected and part of my board is appointed. And frankly, it works great. I love it. A lot of people questioned it when it was first created, but of course there's nothing new under the sun. In 1955, that's how the State Board was constituted then too. It was a hybrid board, the only one of its kind, and then we moved away to full election. So what the governor really wants is a dialogue about school boards. What is their role? What responsibility do they have? And how closely connected are they to their communities in the decisions that they make? So I think it's going to be a lively discussion. The bill will come from a member of the legislature, I believe. I'm not sure even which house, but I think it'll be a really important discussion about the role of school boards and whether they should be fully elected or maybe a hybrid board like we have. So I think it's going to be a great dialogue.
Yeah, very, very interesting to see how that does in the ledge, for sure. Okay, that leads me directly into my next topic that I want to talk about. Pedro Martinez. I think a lot of people were really surprised to see that he was at the State of the State, surprised to see that he's being put now under a state position that's being created for him. Is there any concern on your part that whatever issues, we're not 100% sure about what it was, but whatever issues happened in Washoe County School District will be brought into this new position?
Yeah, absolutely not. Pedro is a good, dedicated public servant who has worked in Clark County and has worked in Washoe County. And that's critical to us. The task that he's taking on for the governor is to serve as a superintendent in residence. He'll be paid on private dollars, so we're not creating a state position for him. I get asked that question a lot in the last few days. So he will work really as an independent agent to provide advice on designing a very specific strategy that the governor outlined. It's called an achievement district. There's one in Louisiana and there's one in Tennessee. A couple of other states are adding them. And it really is a measure of last resort for the state if school districts cannot turn around underperforming schools. The governor was very clear in drawing a line in the sand about chronic underperformance. Some of our schools have been underperforming for 10 years. Underperforming is a nice way to say they have failed a generation of children. There's no other way to say that. If you've been failing for 10 years, it's a generation of kids that have gone through those schools. And it's frustrating for me. It's very frustrating for the governor. So we want to work with the districts to make those schools better. The vast majority of those schools stay in their district. They'll stay in Washoe, they'll stay in Clark, they'll stay in Humboldt. But at the end of the line, probably by school year 16-17, we want to have an achievement district ready to take charge of those schools. There'll probably only be 6 or 10 at that point. But I want to get that right. My assignment from the governor is to get that measure of last resort right, and Pedro can help us do that because he's worked in our 2 biggest districts, and he worked in Chicago where they have charter management organizations and contract organizations that do take over and run schools. So he's going to be a great sounding board. It's going to be he'll probably be with us on that part of the assignment for maybe 6 months. So it's a great assignment for us. We're thrilled to have him. He came and met with us this week at the department to begin talking through, well, what does the bill look like? How does the legislation have to work? And then where do we draw the line? When does a school move into the achievement district versus we give the district a little more time? So I think it's going to be a great partnership. I'm glad to have his intellect to draw on, and I frankly think that the school districts will welcome him because he's been in their shoes. I've not walked in their shoes. Pedro has. So I think it's a great choice.
Now, when you say private dollars, what exactly does that
mean? So the Nevada Public Education Foundation is a philanthropy organization that exists in state law. So we will raise money probably from philanthropy, from foundations that'll go to the foundation. And it's a public entity, so you'll be able to see who that is as soon as those monies are deposited. We're still working on how that will work out. Pedro's working for free today, so as soon as we get that situated, but it'll be, foundations, whether Nevada or national. I'd like to have every dollar of national money that there be local money as well.
So there will be grant money involved? Okay.
Yep.
I think a lot of people were wondering if it would be taxpayer money because,
not taxpayer money.
Considering he's still being paid out for the remainder of
correct.
his contract.
So not a dime of taxpayer money. He doesn't even have an office or a phone. So he's working on his own. He will receive money, probably foundation, private philanthropy money is how that'll work out.
Okay, now moving on to the school districts as a whole and counties as a whole, something that the governor mentioned was kind of equalizing the population, if I understand this correctly, because the disparity between Clark County and some of our smallest counties so huge. Why is it necessary to equalize the population? How will that be done?
Right. So again, I'll give you my history lesson. In 1955, really the counties were much the same size in terms of their population. The rural counties were a little smaller than the, quote, urban counties of Clark and Washoe in those days, but there were only 237,000 people in the entire state.
Right.
Well, today, there's 318,000 students in the Clark County district, and in Esmeralda County, there are 74 students. I have the same set of laws for both those districts. I can't let Esmeralda County off the hook for anything that Clark County is expected to do. So it's difficult from our perspective to administer the law, but also we require every one of those small districts to have a superintendent and to run a busing system and to have a payroll system. Some of those are redundant back of house operations.
Right.
So what the governor has proposed is a pathway for local governments to decide if they should consolidate. Maybe a couple of the rural districts would wish to combine. But that's going to be their choice. I'm not going to draw new district lines in this legislative session. But he's also said that in a larger county like Reno, Washoe County, and Clark County, if a municipality or a local government wished to create its own district, they should have the right to do that. Today, they have no rights. The legislature drew the lines before I was born, and that's the system that is left in place. So what we want to do is have a pathway so that local governments, counties, cities, school districts, have the right to step up and suggest changes.
So then, say Clark County could split in half if it
or
felt it was
into
too
5
unwieldy.
pieces, if each of the cities and the county decided that that was what was appropriate. We don't want to decide. It might not even ever happen, but it ought to be part of this dialogue. The governor is adamant that we modernize this system and be honest with ourselves at the same time that we invest really $780 million in new money in our school. We owe the people of Nevada a really honest dialogue and the opportunity to have change and modernization really at their fingertips. So I'm very excited about it. As I say, I'm very proud of him. It's a great balance of more money and the kinds of reforms, which is a word that is tired. The governor chose to use the word modernization, which I really like. My family has lived in this state for more than a century. And so I'm a Nevadan at my core, but I want my state to modernize. I want my if I have grandchildren someday, I want them to want to be here because it's a modern and exciting place.
Now, of course, all of this comes with a price tag, and the governor mentioned a few different funding avenues. Interesting stuff, I think. But the one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit with you, because this does concern you, he mentioned contract negotiations,
Collective bargaining.
And collective bargaining. I think people in the teachers union maybe heard that and went, oh, like that could mean a cut to my salary. Is that possible?
Well, Nevada has the longest list of negotiated items. So there's a list in our law that says a local government has to agree with its employee associations on all of these things. We have the longest list of any state in the nation. And we also have a really underperforming school system. So some people would draw a conclusion between those two things. I don't know what the collective bargaining bills will look like. Again, the governor will not introduce a bill. Members of the legislature are already drafting bills. But we know that there has to be some give and take in contract negotiations, whether that's arbitration or this long list or it's something that's called the evergreen clause that basically says if you don't ever change the contract, the last one just continues forever. I think all those topics have to be discussed. We have to, again, modernize and provide some new leeway to change the way we spend money at the local district. Governor also came out in favor of pay for performance. We want good teachers to be paid more. Often under collective bargaining agreements, that's not been allowed. They have to all be paid exactly the same. So those are the kinds of changes that I think will be positive and really good for teachers. So I hear a little bit of concern from some members of the teachers associations, and I hear from others who say, yeah, bring it on. I'm a good teacher. So I think, again, it'll be a really important part of this conversation.
Okay, we just have about 2 minutes left, so I wanted to ask you, you said that the governor had a little bit of sticker shock when he saw your original proposal. Is there anything that didn't make it? Anything you really, really want on your wish list?
No, what the governor wisely did to bring the number into line with what Nevada can afford was rolled the changes to the Nevada plan over time. If we had added all the weights right away, the number is really high. So there was an interim study that would have generated between $700 and $800 million, I think, just for student weights, no other category of spending.
Student weights?
So additional spending, English language learners, special education, children in poverty. So those programs, the governor wisely dialed back to what's called a categorical or a grant for the first couple of years. So we'll get to where we want to get with growing those weighted supports. That's how he managed it, and I think it's really smart. We'll also know what works. He's required every new grant program have an outside evaluation, which I'm pleased to provide to the people in Nevada so they know they're getting a return on their investment.
All right, so you got what you wanted, just maybe not quite as much.
Not quite as fast.
Not quite as fast.
But given that it took us 50 years to get here, I think Brian Sandoval has given us a pathway out towards the new Nevada, and if that takes 4 years, that's okay. It took us 50 years to get to where we are, so I'm very proud of him.
All right, Dale, thank you so much for your time. I
It's
sure
been my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. All right, that is it for this episode of Face the State, but for more information on all of this or to see past episodes, just head to our website, ktvn.com. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.